having to really navigate just the loss of my mother and not having a female figure.
Yeah.
And my dad's he's very a militaristic person, right? So very kind of structured and regimented, and you work for everything in your life. And so going from being a shy kid to a dad like that was like very traumatic. I had to speak for myself. And so I'm actually grateful for that, though, because I've had a lot of time to think about why that happened to me, because I used to ask that question a lot.
Right.
And that's kind of grief, right? It's like you go through the different stages of grief, like in different ways. There's like anger, there's resentment. There's a lot of different things that you ask yourself. And the question I always ask, like, why me? Why me? And what I learned from that experience and a lot of work on myself is that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And so I have dedicated my life to making sure that my mom's loss wasn't for, in vain. It was really like her act of like giving me the most beautiful life possible.
Yeah.
And so I live every single day with that and not wasting a single breath. And what a gift it is to actually age. And I have that because of my mom.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Fem Tell All podcast. My name is Madison Bellissimo.
And I'm Ruth Devereaux.
And we're so happy you're here.
Always happy you're here. And we're very happy to have a guest
Another guest for Women's History Month.
And this one we're super excited about.
We
can't even talk enough about how amazing this person is. We've spoken about her many, many times on the podcast.
Yeah, we have.
And now you all get to see her beautiful face.
In person, Miss Steph Medina.
Woo!
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you guys.
We're so excited to have you here. Honestly, we were so elated to have you today. And we talked so much about what we want to cover. And I don't even think we have enough time in a day to really talk about all your accomplishments. But before we get started in that, we really should introduce you to the audience officially. So maybe you could start off by just telling us about yourself, where you grew up, who you are.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. A lot of times when people are asked the question of tell me a little bit about yourself, they usually go to what they do.
Yeah.
But I'm going to switch it up a bit.
Yes.
Please. I love
that. I do.
So I'm going to start with who I am, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I do. So I am a perfectly imperfect, just human who has experienced a ton of trauma in life. And has gotten really clear on what my purpose is. And my purpose is to leave people better than I found them.
And you do. You absolutely do. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can attest to that.
I appreciate it. And so I grew up with a beautiful family. My dad is German. He was in the military. My mom, Filipino, came here, probably after 2 years of being married from the Philippines. And so I was raised in a beautiful, beautiful home, and then experienced really, really tough hardships. My mom passed away when I was 9. We were in a car accident. And those experiences throughout my life have kind of led me to what I do now. I'm a chief people officer.
Yeah.
So it's a progressive term for essentially chief human resources officer. And so I lead over 15,000 employees.
It's just a small job.
That's it. Pressure is a privilege. I can feel it. And I also am a M&A executive. And what that means is I'm responsible for acquisitions and looking at the people side of transactions.
Holy shit.
Wow. I mean, just even in that introduction, there's so much to kind of get into.
Yeah.
I mean, just losing your mom at such a young age, that had to be so impactful on your life. And I know it shaped a lot of who you are.
Yes.
And I'm sure a lot of our listeners, unfortunately, have maybe experienced some similar loss. I would love to hear about how that affected you, how you worked through that, what that process was like for you.
Yeah, it was, I was 9 years old, and I've had many, many years of working through this. And when people used to ask me about it, I would just break down in tears, and I couldn't even answer the question.
Yeah.
But I actually oddly enough, like I am so grateful for that experience and what a blessing it is. And it actually makes me appreciate life more because there's a reason why I survived and she did not. And I think it's an ultimate testament to just what we want for our children, right? Is if we could give our own life for someone else, for our child, essentially, we would do that. And so that's kind of what's allowed me to come to terms with losing my mom at such a young age. But we were actually hit by a drunk driver in the middle of the day. And it was about 2 weeks before I was supposed to start school. So it was in the middle of summer, or not in the middle, but at the end of summer. And I had to actually cut my mom's seatbelt to try to save her. And unfortunately, her lungs had collapsed. And I just remember being pulled out of the wreckage from the back window, and they had to use the jaws of life. And it was such a traumatic experience for a 9-year-old girl. I was extremely shy. Yeah. I used to hide behind my mom. And I remember this beautiful family coming across the street and offering me an opportunity to go into their house while all this is happening. And they were trying to revive my mom. They revived her. And she made it to the hospital. They had her on life support. And probably maybe a few days later, my dad had to make the tough decision to take her off life support because she did not have any brain activity. Yeah. And that completely changed my life. Yeah. I went from being a very shy kid to having to really navigate just the loss of my mother and not having a female figure. Yeah. And my dad's he's very a militaristic person, right? So very kind of structured and regimented, and you work for everything in your life. And so going from being a shy kid to a dad like that was very traumatic. I had to speak for myself. And so I'm actually grateful for that though, because I've had a lot of time to think about why that happened to me, because I used to ask that question a lot. Right. And that's kind of grief, right? It's you go through the different stages of grief, in different ways. There's anger, there's resentment, there's a lot of different things that you ask yourself. And the question I always ask is why me? Why me? And what I learned from that experience and a lot of work on myself is that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And so I have dedicated my life to making sure that my mom's loss wasn't for, in vain. It was really her act of giving me the most beautiful life possible. Yeah. And so I live every single day with that and not wasting a single breath. And what a gift it is to actually age. And I have that because of my mom. Yeah.
Yeah. So beautiful. And I mean, as you guys can already tell, just the spirit in you and the heart you carry with you, it's just so palpable when you walk into a room. Thank you. And there's so many layers to you, and that being one of the layers I think that shaped you into this beautiful human being that you are today. But thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'd also be interested to know, you have 2 amazing sons.
Beautiful boys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. I feel like I know Caleb and Liam. I think they're so wonderful. Every time I'm seeing pictures of them, and also not to I'll obviously let you speak on your boys, you're the expert, but seeing it from even just a social media, and I know I'm getting the tippy top of the iceberg layer. They are not only so loved, you can tell they're just so deeply loved, and it's gonna make me emotional. But it also, they're so happy, they're so curious. You'll post stories sometimes of them talking to you, asking you a question, and it's just so wonderful. And I would love to hear about you being a mom after, especially a significant loss like that. Was it? Maybe did you know that you always wanted to be a mom? Was it maybe a harder decision because you had lost your mom?
Such a good question. And I was afraid of actually becoming a mother because I wasn't mothered after the age of 9. Yeah. And so I was actually really afraid. And for a long time, I wasn't sure. I would always say I want kids. Yeah. But I was afraid of being married because I saw my dad go through that loss. And then I also got to experience him remarrying, and that was not the best experience for me. And so I struggled with, do I want to bring children into this world? They're going to have to go through what I went through. Yeah. And now I can say, now that I'm on the other side of that, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And you kind of figure out who you are by actually watching your children live. And I'm going to get so emotional, but I'm an open book, and with my boys, like what I try to do is I don't want my children to be me. I don't want my boys to try to impress me. I am already impressed with them.
Yeah.
Like I love them for who they are, no matter what they decide to become. And what a beautiful gift they've given me, because I've had to really figure out like who I am, you know, and the more that I work on myself, the better mother I'm going to be for them. And so, oh my gosh, they are just such curious people. And that's one of the things that I'm really intentional about is to like, I want them to have an insatiable curiosity for the world.
Sure.
And to know that no matter what you try, no matter what you fail at, like you're going to be loved by me no matter what, me and my husband, Jose. And because of that, I think that it's given them this bravery that like they can speak their mind. And, you know, my older son, Liam, who's 7, he'll be 8 soon. He'll say things sometimes where he's like, you know,
Like, can you share with them what you shared with us yesterday?
Oh yeah. So he's doing baseball. So he's headed to baseball practice, and I happened to look back to the back seat, and he has his eyes closed, and he's like has his head on the back of the seat, and I'm like, are you tired? And then Jose's like, hey, dude, you gotta wake up. Like you gotta get your head in the game. And he's like, Dad, I just need a second. I'm trying to focus. And I was like,
I know.
I looked over at Jose and I'm like, but it's those moments where I realize like we are giving them so many tools to live life and be like, I need a second, you know? And so I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, and he just kind of sat there, and then like he gets to practice, and like he opens up and he's like,
he had
focused. He was focused. And it's like, he's 7.
Yeah.
But that is innately who he is.
Yeah.
And so we give him that space.
No, and talk about trust. Like he trusts you guys enough. Like that is so beautiful. Like, you know, I obviously I'm not a mom, but I love kids. I've nannied, I've babysat, and that's something that it's so interesting to find the relationship between the kids and the parents. And that him telling you guys, being like, I need a second. It's so lovely because it's just showing that he trusts you enough that you wouldn't reprimand him for being like, I need to take a moment. He also trusts himself enough because you've created a safe space for him to do that, and like in his upbringing. That's so wonderful. And it's funny, obviously, because you're like, you're 80. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you need a moment? Like, you're 7. You don't need a moment. But obviously he did, and he used that.
And he took that moment. Yeah. And that's kind of what I want to, you know, teach my kids is like, they've taught me so much. I think one of the things I'm learning from my boys is we are who we are by the age of 5. And the more that we can connect as people to that childlike self, the more that we're going to feel really satisfied with our lives. And so with my boys, I try to give them like the safe space to just be who they are. And I know that when they get older, they're going to be met with the world telling them like, you can't be that, and you have to conform, and you have to be whatever society tells you. And especially too, they're growing up in an age where there's social media, and there's all these things telling you you have to fit into this box. And so I am rebelling against that. And I want to teach my children, like, you are who you are, and that is your gift to the world. And to see them doing that, I'm like, wow, what a gift.
Yeah, what badasses
Wow.
too. You're raising 2 badasses. And I think, I know you actually know Jose. I've met Jose.
Yes, he's incredible.
And he's so lovely.
I mean, talk about choosing the right partner.
Yeah.
And how impactful that is. Not only, I would love to hear how it's impacted you as a whole person and in your career and life, but like even when you speak to Jose about being a father and the way his eyes light up, and the joys he has in like being a father, and the way he talks about the boys and like the things he does with them. And like, even when we were talking about Liam meditating in the car, he was like, well, I wake up with him every morning, and before we get started in the day, I go like, what's your intention for the day? Like, where are you going with this day? And like, he melts into that fatherhood so well. And like, he just enjoy, like, it's such a beautiful thing, even just to hear him speak about it. And to even see your relationship. I've known Stephanie since before Jose. I know pre-Jose.
Yes,
pre-Jose.
And
Wow.
prior to meeting my partner now, I looked up your guys' relationship so much. I saw the love. I saw the way you guys spoke to each other, the way you guys communicated. And it's so amazing after so many years, after building a home together, having a family together, like still seeing you guys communicate and have that relationship still so strong and so loving and so kind with strength behind it is so amazing. But I won't speak for your relationship.
We're done.
The podcast is over. Yeah. No, I mean, I've witnessed it too.
Yeah.
I'm just going to co-sign. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is so wonderful to witness.
Yeah.
You guys are so magnetic too. I use that word to describe you so much, and it just makes sense that you two would share that quality as well, because you were, it's cosmic. You can tell. Yeah. And it is so lovely to witness, and I would just love to hear
let's tell everybody about the start of the relationship. Like, how did you meet Jose? Like, what was that beginning like for you? And like, how did he differ? How did you know he was different? How was this, like, you could clearly see, like, this is a different path for me and this is the right partner for me?
My goodness. Do we have like a few hours?
Yes.
Yeah. So we met, so actually before I talk about how we met, I'll talk about what I liked before.
Yeah.
And Jose was gonna be like, oh, we don't talk about before me.
Jose.
No, because I had grown up, so I lost my mom when I was 9. I lost my brother 9 months after my mom. He was actually murdered. And my dad had remarried, gotten to a marriage where it was very manipulative, just in general. And my stepsister was very manipulative. And so for a huge part of my upbringing, I'd never really felt safe emotionally. And so I found myself dating guys that physically represented protection and safety for me. Because that's what I thought. Like, if I found, these 6 foot something guys that had that build, that was protection. I'd always feel safe. And that was not the case. I dated a lot of emotionally unavailable people that just did not treat me. It didn't feel right. And it took a really long time for me to figure it out. And it actually happened on accident. So I had gone out with my god sister, Edith. She's like, you need to stop staying at home. We're going to go out. It's a Thursday night. We're going to go to this bar, this tiny hole in the wall bar. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I got dressed up. We were there and it was almost closing time. And Jose actually walked up and Edith was like, this is my friend Jose. But what had happened before that, I did not know this. I had gone to the restroom as he was approaching me, and I didn't see him. I just kind of walked past him, and he was embarrassed to go back. Yeah, I was just kind of like, I didn't see him.
Oh my
but
God.
The way he tells the story is that he had saw me earlier in the night, and what he appreciated was, like, I wasn't there for attention. I was really there just to have a good time.
Yeah.
And so he had his eye on me, and he's a very shy person, very reserved. And so he kept like eyeing me, and his cousin was like, you need to just go at this point. Like,
This is
just
ridiculous.
go. And so he mustered up the courage, and I walked away, not realizing it. And he didn't want to go back because he was too embarrassed to be like, she walked away.
Yeah.
So he actually went to Edith. He was like, hey, I saw your friend. Is she alone? And she was like, just stand here. Like, I'll introduce you. But she knew that I had this rule. I would not date any guy or even talk to at a bar.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Because no good could be found in a bar. So I thought I was wrong.
Okay. Love it.
And so he took a different approach. So he came up and he was like, oh, how are you? He was talking to both of us, engaging with both of us. And then, I thought it was her friend. So I gave him a big hug. I'm like, nice to meet you. And we just had casual conversation. And he's like, hey, we should all go to lunch. So it was like very non-threatening. He's not trying to hit on me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. He's like, do me a favor. When you guys get home, text me that you got home safely. And so he gave me his phone number. And it was like I'm like, that's a green flag. I like that. So he gave me the choice essentially to decide to. And so I texted him, and so I texted him when we got home, and then I told you, I'm like, how come I've never met him? Like, I've met all of your friends. And she's like, well, because I just met him tonight.
Icon. Truly icon.
And I was like,
Cupid herself.
yes. And I even tell her today, like, who would have known? Like, you're the reason why I married this man. And so it was just such a beautiful, it was kind of like life looking out for me. And so we had this like courtship, but he was planning to go back to the military. So he was in the Marines and he was planning to go back. And then we met. And so he didn't really want to actually have a relationship because he's like, I don't want to make you wait for me. And so finally I was like, okay, if you can't choose me, then I'm going to walk. And so I did. And I ended up meeting someone else, and I was in Las Vegas for Valentine's Day weekend, and Jose was still my friend on Instagram or Facebook. It was one of those. And so he was seeing me post these pictures with my old version of the men that I liked, you know? And so he, it was 2:00 in the morning, and I'd got back from the club, and I get a text message from Jose, and he's like, I want to see you when you get back. I see what you're doing, and I want to take you out on a date. And so I was like, and then I responded, and I'm like, I'm not here to play games. So we're only going on a date if you're serious about this. And and so when we got back, he took me to the movies, and it was like it was just so casual and appreciated. And he said, you know, in the car, he was like, that man does not deserve you. You deserve better than that, and I can give you that. And I was like, don't be so sure of yourself. And he did. Like, he was just completely opposite of what I typically like looked for. But what I started to realize was like, he was someone that I could have really long conversations with about life. And I'd never experienced that. And he was willing to go deep with me, even though he didn't have the skill set at the time, like, because he grew up like with a very simple life, didn't really encounter a lot of challenges, came from a wonderful like parents, married parents. And so, so Jose is just a phenomenal human being, and he like has given me such a safe space, and he has taught me that protection is not in the physicality. It's someone that protects your heart and your mind, and they go deep with you. And they're not afraid to work on themselves. And so, you know, we've been married now. It'll be 10 years next year.
I can't believe that.
I know.
Wow.
Thank you. And it's, marriage is hard, right? Because you're two people coming together to continue to grow. And my dad's funny, when Jose proposed to me, my dad's like, she's a lot to handle. And no refunds. No returns. No take you back. Like, she's yours forever. And but Jose was committed to that. And so like he's one of those people that is just salt of the earth. So pure and like he's there for everything. And I owe my career to Jose because he actually left his career so I could pursue mine. So
that's so inspiring. I'm jotting down notes. I'm like, protect your heart and mind. Okay. And it's true though. Like it's just seeing you guys in action. You two are so inspiring. And again, it sometimes, no judgment, but sometimes you see couples and they're co-parenting and you're like, the mom's running the show. You know, you're like, the dad is lovely. He's not abusive. He's not doing anything, but he's
just there.
He's a babysitter and she's the mom, you know? And I'm like, okay. And you don't see that with Jose at all with the boys. You can tell he's so hands-on, and you guys like truly split as much. And with you having the flexibility to pursue your own career, which there's been multiple months of me now. Well, we've known each other for years now.
Yes,
funny enough. But when we first met, I sat next to you at this event. It was like Ruth hosted a dinner for all these inspiring women in her life, and I was like, I'll get my ass there. Whatever. And I don't know why I felt so inclined to sit next to you. I was like,
I always
really
tell her,
like
I
her
think
energy.
at that dinner, everybody sat by who they should. Like it just worked. Like, and everybody chose their own seats, but everybody was drawn to the right person for them to be next to.
Yeah, I agree. And I was so lucky to sit next to you. And I remember like a quarter into the dinner, I'm like, mouth agape, like eating, talking to you, because you were just like talking about your life with Jose, talking about being a mom, talking about your career, how much you've done in your career. And I just remember being like, it was one of those moments where you meet someone and you're like, I don't know what you're doing, but I want to be you. Like,
oh,
yeah. And no, it truly was. I was just like, I don't want to do necessarily like a corporate job necessarily. Yeah. But I'm like, after hearing what you do and how you do it and how successful you've been, like, and how inspiring you are, I'm like, sign me up. I'll fucking do it any day. Like, that's where I was like, I don't acting who? Like, you know, it's like the thing that I've dreamt about since I've been literally like 3, you know, it was one of the, that's how inspiring and magnetic you are. You talking about your own experience and how you led your life to where it's at. Was just so captivating. And I was just like, how do I become Steph Medina? So how does one become Steph Medina?
That's what we're titling the show.
Oh my gosh. I feel so honored. Like,
no, it's very true though.
Yeah.
I want to just like rewind here a little bit just because I think so many people feel like to find the partnership that you found, that you have to be perfectly healed and then you have to be in this perfect place and you have to like do all this work beforehand. And I think there's so much that goes into when you find that person doing it together. Did you feel like you experienced that with Jose and like you were able to heal together, or like how did that process work for you?
Yeah. I think that you can find your human at any state of your life. Some people choose to heal before and that's okay. And some, they're in the thick of it and they're like, we're in this together and we're going to just, you know, like it's like a messy room, right? Like that's your mess. Like this is all our mess. Like we gotta sort through it. And what I'm appreciative for like mine and Jose's relationship and marriage is like, we were so imperfect as just humans, but I'll never forget an early conversation that we had. We used to have like conversations in our cars until like 3 a.m. And it was just so beautiful. Like our first date, our first date before we officially got together was actually after Taco Bell, and we're eating Taco Bell in the car. And so what we did actually on our wedding was we had Taco Bell after the wedding. Yeah,
that's so sweet.
Oh, I was telling Madison, I can't remember the story exactly, but I was telling her I remember at your wedding the card box being stolen.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And I remember your energy and your reaction to it was so not what the normal person would do. And I'm like, it just speaks so much to your character and who you are. I swear I remember you even saying like they probably needed it more than us. Yeah. And like that again just speaks so much to her character. Like they threw this beautiful wedding, like everybody's wrapping out. There was a huge box of cards from all the guests that had like gifts in it.
Yeah. It was thousands of dollars in there. Yeah.
And like you were like, some people would have let that ruin the day or the moment or the memory. And you were just like, they probably needed it more than us. Yeah. And I thought that was such a beautiful sentiment. And like, just like, it just, again, highlights who you are.
Thank you. I feel like compassion is it's who I am. And I think it's because I've been through so much that I'm like, money, like I can make that in my sleep. I can figure that out. Yeah. And you know, like whatever happens to me, I've been through far worse.
Yeah.
So, but with Jose, like the healing aspect of things, one of the earlier conversations that I remember with Jose was he said to me, we are going to always have respect for each other. And the day that is gone will be the day that we decide that this is no longer healthy for us.
Yeah.
And he was not like, he wasn't someone that, you know, could talk and talk and talk. But when he said that, I was like, this feels right. Like my heart, it was almost like someone just kind of rubbed my heart and just said like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And he taught me, I'm like, I want more moments like that. And so we've grown together. And so there's moments, I'm a very fiery. Like when I say I'm fiery, like I will
Camera's
cut
catching
you.
this.
And Jose has this gentle, like old soul. And like we are complete opposites. So as you can imagine, when two opposites come together, like, you know, they say opposites attract. Like, oh no, we had friction for a long time because he used to say like, stop managing me. You are not my manager. And what I appreciated about that, it was like, he was the example of healthy masculinity for me, where like he would challenge me, but he would do it in a way that respected who I am as a woman. But he also was like, I'm not gonna take no shit from you, girl. Yeah. So he'd put me in my place.
Yeah.
And he's done that for years and years while also just respecting who I am.
Yeah.
And I think like we've worked through so much stuff. Like Liam, you know, had gone through brain surgery. We've gone through real difficult things in our marriage. And there's even been times where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like I used to run at the beginning of our relationship, even our marriage. I used to want to run from it because that's all I knew how to do from my childhood. And I kept trying to run away, and I'll never forget. And that changed everything is, again, him challenging me. He was like, I am not going anywhere. We are going to work through this because we made a commitment together that we were going to be with each other through thick and thin. And he's like, so you can run all you want, but I'm going to be here when you get back. Yeah. And when he said that, I was like, take me, take me away. No, and I realized then, I'm like, you know what, if I'm going to make this work, I have to change. I have to stop running. I have to stop, feeling like you got to prove yourself to me, because I had been hurt so much as a kid that I was looking for someone to prove that even if that you would chase me. Yeah. And Jose's like, I'm not chasing you, but I will be here when you get back. Yeah. And I was like, damn.
And that shows his respect for himself too. Like, and that's not wavering his love for you. That's why he's like, I will always be here. Yeah. But at the end of the day, he's not. He's like, be fucking for real.
Yeah. I'm not gonna, you need to get your together, girl.
Yeah. Well, that is like a perfect example, I think, of that masculinity that's still like kind, right? Like he's like still the man that you can respect and you can look up to. While still knowing you're loved. Like that's incredible.
So steady.
Yeah,
like how you
a great word.
How you describe him seems so steady. Like, and it's funny, like a lot of the things you talk about again because I don't see you as much in person, so I get a lot of Instagram stuff. I'm like, hey, Steph. But when you talk about being fiery, I'm like, recognize real. Like,
you can see it. Like if you follow me on Instagram, if someone pops off at me, I have no problem putting you in your place in person and on Instagram.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. And I'm like, it's just so funny because I'm like, ooh, it's like looking in a mirror sometimes where I'm like, I relate to like, I can manage it. I'm going to do everything. It's fine. And I think I've always had this realization where I've been like, okay, well, my partner would have to challenge me. I've always said that. Like when I describe partners what I want, I'm always like, I want someone to challenge me. And there's been many times where I'm like, I didn't mean that bad. Like, I'm like, you're like crying. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, that was too much of a challenge. Okay. But I do still stand by it in that way where it's like, I think I do the best with people that like put me in my place a little. And so hearing that, I'm like, there is hope for the future. And it's so beautiful. I hope other people at home that might have, might be at the end of their rope, so to speak, when it comes to relationships are like, okay, it can still happen and someone can be reliable, especially even after traumatic events, like you said, and having things that, so quote unquote baggage, right? That you bring with yourself that you would want to run after a hard time.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like Jose is really good about, and I think in relationships, really great relationships are a mirror for you. Your friendships, business relationships, marriages, anything. Like the people in your life should be a mirror for you, and they should be able to hold that mirror up in the most compassionate way. To be there to be like, you're not so nice today, but I love you, and I'm here to work through it with you. But call you out on your stuff. Like, I don't want to be around people that are just going to tolerate me and then maybe like gripe about it behind my back. Like, I want to be held accountable to becoming a better person.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to understand the mergers and acquisitions side a little bit more because we went on the longest double date last night.
That's such a good. Yes, we did.
We went to a convention that was incredible. Yeah. We were there for 13 hours, felt like 13 minutes in some capacities, and then also felt like 2 days in other capacities.
I was exhausted.
But you spoke about how in the mergers and acquisitions part of what you do, you really have to meet and break down people of like who they are and what their strengths are. Yeah. And I saw it even in some of your conversations yesterday and the questions that you posed to certain people, like the way you got people to open up. And I think that's such a great skill to have across the board just in life. So I'm sure that took some learning to do that. Like maybe you could help us learn the best way to, like when we're first meeting people, like how to assess, what to say, like how to ask those questions that aren't too prying, but still like opening to learn who a person is.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So on the mergers and acquisitions side, it's my role as chief people officer, so I have a dual role. I am both a chief people officer for an operating brand, meaning like the business that actually provides like the home care. But then we also work on acquisitions. We call them partnerships because it really is a partnership. And so what we do is we look for companies that do something similar to what we do. And my role in all of that is the people due diligence side. So when we see a company we like and it matches kind of the services we provide, they've got good, previous like performance history. My role to go in is to look at their leadership. Because you can tell a lot at the highest level what kind of company you're going to get, what kind of culture you're going to get by the leader that is in place.
Totally.
And so my role is to go in and ask questions about like, how do you run the company? How do you view people? We are a people first company. And so what that means is like we really prioritize the business side of things, but also people are extremely important. So we try to couple those things together. And so what I've learned, not just in life, but also in business, is that everyone is always going to give you the best of themselves. And they're like like when you interview, right? Or whatever you put on your resume, whatever you put on social media is going to be the best of yourself.
I call it the highlight reel.
The highlight reel. I love that. Yeah. I'm going to use that actually. so tell me about your highlight reel, but then tell me about all the editing you did.
Exactly. What's on the cutting room floor. Yeah.
And so my job, and I love it. I love it so much because I get to really dig. I get to dig and I kind of get to pry open the door on people's closets, and see all the skeletons in there. And then also teach them like, it's okay to have them because I'm here to help you and the rest of your organization, get to the highest level, not just in performance, but for your people.
Yeah.
And so part of like the questions that I was asking yesterday is like people will give you their highlight reel. They'll give you all the accomplishments and that's why I don't like to start with the elevator pitch. They always start with like the title. And our titles are not who we are. That's not our identity. Our identity are all of the experience we have. So basically through questions that I ask them in a way where I'm not asking you to judge you. I'm asking you because I genuinely want to know who you are. So when I'm coaching you, when I'm helping you close the gap on something, I know exactly what I'm dealing with. And I can't do that if you're hiding from me. And if you're hiding from me, you're definitely hiding from you. And so I serve as a mirror to people and organizations. And I think it goes back to like my purpose. My purpose is to leave people better than I found them. And to do it in every capacity, whether it's like podcasts with you guys, this conversation, or companies or relationships. And so I try to do it in a way where the person doesn't feel like you're judging me, because that's when people they get defensive, they shut down, and you don't get the real raw truth. And so it's really like it's kind of like Marcus Lemonis is really good at this. We saw this yesterday. He
Marcus, we loved you if you're watching.
Call us. Call us so we can work with you. He did such a good job of just seeing into people's souls. And so I try to do that in a way where I'll ask a surface level question and I'll see their body language. Do they close down? Do they hunch their shoulders, or do they kind of give me a deep stare because they're thinking about what they don't want to say? And what I'll usually do is I'll say hey, I can sense some hesitation from you, and I just want you to know I'm really here to help. That's it. I just want to help you. And then I'll see them kind of relax. The voice changes. And so I really try my best in conversations to remove those barriers, essentially.
Wow.
And it's very different from mergers and acquisitions and private equity backed companies, because they have a really bad reputation of just going in and wiping, getting rid of everybody and starting over and bringing in their own talent. And we take a different approach. And so
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Secondary question to that. Yeah. So you deal with a ton of different personalities.
Oh yeah.
How do you overcome those tough personalities? How do you break them down for one so you can get them to open up? Because I know that you can. But how do you first approach that person? Because that's really tough too. Somebody that's maybe aggressive or or a man that doesn't want to like respect a woman, or
Got lots of those.
I'd love to hear that.
Those are my
one.
favorite. Crush their soul. No, eat them alive.
do witchcraft in the background.
Seriously. Yeah, no, I think the first thing that I always recognize is like we are all unhealed people. And so when someone approaches me with aggression or if they're like they don't respect women, I used to, the fiery side of me was like, I'm gonna put you in your place and you're gonna stay in that place. Like,
Let's fight. Let's fight.
Yeah, like I'm ready to fight.
Yeah.
And it's taken me some time to realize like, if I'm really gonna make an impact on those people, I can't make them defensive. I can't have them go into fight mode. I can't back them into a corner. I've got to really understand what that unhealed part is and do it in a way where they don't even have to tell me.
Yeah.
And most men that let's say like, you know, we've come a long way as women, in business and life and our families and all that. But there are still some men out there that feel like, oh, they have to mansplain to you or they talk down to women. And when I see that, it depends on the attitude, but usually I will call it out. I'm like, hey, I haven't worked with someone like you before. And so I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little bit taken back, but that you would make a comment about a woman like that. But we're going to change things today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, like most men are not used to women pushing back because as a lot of times women usually retract and they get defensive, right? Yeah. And when you bring emotions into a situation like that, we can't hear each other, you know? And so I try as much as possible with all the personalities is just to recognize like there's someone else's child in front of me. And
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like they didn't have the kind of upbringing that I had. They didn't have maybe they didn't have the love that they needed. So they're trying to prove themselves through their aggression. And a lot of times, like when I meet people that are highly aggressive or they're like, you know, putting down other people, there's an unhealed part of them. And so I always approach it with compassion. But I also am like, I'm not taking your crap and I'm going to call you out on it. And then we're going to move on and we're going to do what we need to do here.
Correct.
And I have to stand really comfortably in that sometimes. And sometimes I'm met with pushback, like constant. Yeah. But because I am persistent, like if I don't get it that day, I'm going to get it another day. And usually over time, they usually come around. And there's been executives and different people that I work with where they're like, you are so good at what you do. And I don't know how you did it, but like you helped me realize what I need to change about myself. And I'm like, that's what I'm here to do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm an expert in.
I'm still figuring it out myself. Yeah.
Please. Yeah. You're being humble, but yeah, it's true. I think you can see that. I've seen you post some really inspiring things. I remember there was I think an instance where someone was being judged for being a mother or like about to be a mother or something like that. And I was like, Steph, go get them. Because you were like, would you talk about a man like this? Like if the man was about to have a baby, would you be concerned about how much he could show up in this role? And I was like, fucking facts, dude. Like I was so glad that you posted about that and had like shared your experience with that.
Yeah, there was someone that was hesitant to hire a woman that they had done research on and saw that she had recently come back from maternity leave and pure ignorance, but they made a comment of like, I don't want to have to worry about this person taking time off. And I was so heated, especially being a mother and having gone through maternity leave myself and coming back and giving it my all while also having to deal with everything in my personal life. I'm like, oh, I'm not letting you go on this one, buddy. You're going to interview the most qualified person, regardless of what they have going on in their personal life, and you're going to hire the best candidate. I'm not saying you have to hire this person, but you're going to hire the best candidate for this role, whether it's a male, female, alien, I don't care. And so I stick with my guns on that. And because I know who I am and I'm constantly doing the work on myself, it makes me better equipped to hold people like that accountable.
I love that. As a woman and being a high-powered woman, what other obstacles did you have to go to get to this place?
Yeah.
What advice do you have for women that are maybe trudging through those same hurdles and problems and pains? Because it's not easy. As much as we have advanced in our society, like women are still viewed in certain ways, and there are still struggles to overcome, and like being a strong woman and like having titles associated with that. Like what did you do, and how did you get there, and what lessons would you take with you and give to other people?
Oh my gosh, that's such a loaded question.
Sorry, I know
I
I gave you like 5 different things.
No, that's okay. No, I think this actual industry that I've been in it for 14 years. I started as an entry-level employee, and I've held just about every role that the company has had. And there were plenty of moments where I'm like, I can't do this. I'm never going to make it. And I used to want to be a CEO. And then along the way, I kind of figured out like, I love people and I love the complicated parts of them. I love just every aspect of it. But being a female in business and trying to strive to the highest level of any role, doesn't matter what industry you're in, you're going to be met with men who are going to try to stop you and women who are going to try to stop you.
Correct.
And so it's taught me, I've learned a lot about every single person they're projecting their own experiences onto you, right? And so I'll never forget, there was an instance where another female leader that had more experience than me, I was emotional one day. It was, I think, during the pandemic. And I started crying, and she said to me, this was on like a one-to-one conversation. She's like, there is no crying in business because people will walk all over you. And she meant well. She totally meant well.
Yeah.
But
And she's like, women don't cry in business. And I'm like, well, then you haven't met this woman.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm going to let people see my vulnerability. And I'm going to show them that not only can I cry about what I'm going through, because I'm going to feel how difficult this experience is, but I'm going to figure this out. And so my advice to women is like, do the work on yourself and kind of figure out who you are, because the faster that you do that, when you're met with any challenges, whether, you know, you're in acting or any sort of industry, you know how to approach every situation because you have clarity on who you are and what you are there to do. And don't feel like you have to do it the way everyone else does. Because I think vulnerability is just it's a superpower.
Yeah.
Like I say it all the time, it is such a superpower. And the more people that bring their best selves and their true selves, like just the better off we'll be.
I love that so much, because I think so many times we show strength in just one facet of it, right?
Yeah.
And so when we ourselves are strong but have moments of weakness, we feel that makes us weak all around, and then we struggle with then feeling strong. I think it takes women that are strong showing up and saying like, I can cry, but then I'm going to figure it out. I love that line. And I'm going to show you all my sides. And it's all encompassing of me as a human being. It's not just one part of it.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Yeah. And there's there's some people that are like, I'm not a crier, and that's okay. Then
Yeah.
that's you, you know,
Yeah.
but showing up as yourself, what you'll realize too is that it brings you so much peace to just step into who you are unapologetically. And it's so freeing to just be like, this is me in all my glory, good, bad, ugly, and different. And I think if that's the only piece of advice I could give, like you will be able to deal with anything that comes your way because you're like, I know who I am.
Yeah. You're so inspiring. I love talking to you. I could literally do it for hours, but I do want to know, I mean, you are so young and you've accomplished so many things, and you have your boys' lives ahead of you, your and Jose's life ahead of you.
Yes.
What's next for Steph Medina? Like, what would, I feel like the world is your oyster. What would you want to continue pursuing? Maybe pivot? What are some things that you want to do?
I love that question. And I constantly think about what's next because I feel like our lives we only get one life, right? And so I used to be told like, you're too ambitious. Like you need to slow down, or you're constantly chasing, you're constantly chasing the next thing. And I think that usually comes from people that are like,
Insecure.
I'm insecure or like I'm basically holding up a mirror and there's something inside of themselves that they're afraid of, that they don't want to confront, and they see it in me and they're like, yeah, you can't be too ambitious. Like that's them projecting.
totally.
So what's next? So I have gotten so much clarity on just who I am as a person. And I recently wrote a book. Yay! It's not out yet. But if you follow me on Instagram, I will share. Yeah. I wrote it and I was ready to release it. And then I was like, and they always say when you're writing a book, if it's the first time you're writing it, you will think you're ready and then you go to release it and then you're like, wait, this doesn't feel done yet. And so that's what happened to me. But
I've also heard from a lot of writers, you never feel like it's done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I know that this next time I'm like, no, we're going to get it out there. Progress over perfection. Like, absolutely. But the book is called like, Who Do You Think You Are? And it is about so many different things, but it's kind of a play on words. So when you think about who do you think you are, for myself, it's the inner critic that's like, who do you think you are trying to be chief people officer? Who do you think you are trying to be a mother and a wife and have a career? Who do you think you are? And that inner critic is the biatch that I have been like struggling with internally for years of like, I was trying to drown out just who I was because society was telling me like, you can't be that. You can't be all those things. Yeah. Throughout the book, I share my life experiences and recognizing who that inner critic was born from, like who actually in my life created that inner voice for me. And then I talk about the inner hero, which is based off of my sister. So my sister used to tell me things like, stop feeling sorry for yourself. And when she would say that, I'm like, oh, that's so mean. Yeah. But I am so grateful for that. And in the book, I talk about like, me transitioning from the inner critic and that question to me starting to say like, who do you think you are? And asking myself that question with so much like compassion for myself. To the end of it will be like, this is exactly who I am. And sharing that with the world. And my hope is that I leave people better than I found them after they read it. And then the other part is I actually created a company called For You. So it's FORU, and it stands for This Is For You. And so I want to create a community where people can actually work on themselves and do it from anywhere in the world. And so I'm using my own experiences to be able to do that.
It's amazing.
I couldn't love you more, Steph. I really couldn't. I'm just so glad that you agreed to come on to the podcast. And also, I have to say, you've been supportive since day one, and we are so thankful for that. Like we know that we are so lucky for our community. I know you guys at the convention you went to yesterday, like that was a big part of it, a big stressor of who your community is, and we are just so thankful and lucky to have you in our community. Thank you for introducing me.
Thank you, Sandra, for introducing me.
Thanks, Sandra. We love you too. And it's true though, because I think, from day one, you've been posting about us. You've been like, check this out. Like you are just so kind and compassionate and lovely. And we couldn't thank you more.
And you're a cheerleader for women. You're a cheerleader for people that are trying to be better. You're like, you honestly like are just a guiding light for so many of us. And we do have a question for you.
To wrap us up.
Is who's a woman that you admire in your life?
Oh my gosh. There's so many. In fact, I try not to pick one because I think there's something that we can learn from each other. Totally. And it's actually why I'm such a big fan of you guys and what you guys are doing. And like, I will sing your praises from the rooftops, mountaintops, like, because I think any person that wants to make an impact on the world in whatever way that they can and will do, like, I'm going to support that. And so there's different women that like I've followed. One day, I promise I'm going to sit next to Oprah. I don't care what it takes.
You are. I could totally see what is it, Soul Sundays or
something?
I'm not sure.
She has like the Soul Sundays where she brings like people on and it's really about like feeding the soul on Sunday. You are perfect.
Thank you.
You do feel.
I just want to learn more about her. Like I want to see what she's like. And I've just I'm just so impressed by her. But there's a lot of women that don't have, the fame that are in my life that inspire me. I think you two are a perfect example of that. Sandra is a perfect example of that. But I try to find women in my everyday life that inspire me and people. And the reason for that is that some people don't want fame, right? But they're brilliant in just who they are as people. And
how they touch lives.
So the people that inspire me are the ones that are like, they're not out trying to intentionally harm people because they're projecting, right? The people that inspire me are the ones that are constantly working on themselves and they're not afraid to be like, I am I am not good in this area. And they're just authentic and vulnerable. Like those people inspire me.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you want to say who you're inspired by? Or you can say what you're grateful for?
I mean, like Stephanie obviously is an inspiration completely.
Yeah.
Like we're so blessed to like have you on, and honestly, getting to spend the day with you yesterday was just incredidible. And not only like just being a great friend, but also just like bringing those kind of events into my life, and like also again like just being like such an incredible couple that's been together for over a decade and raising a family, and just an inspiration for Neil and I as well. Like we spoke so much about you guys afterwards, and how we use you guys as the North Star just for how we want our relationship to continually evolve too. So
Thank you.
yeah.
I love that.
Thank you for being here. We're so thankful.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Do you want to say?
I mean, I'm thankful for both of you. I'm inspired by both of you.
love fest.
Yeah, it is. It is always a love fest on Fem Tell All. If you're here and you're like, why you don't watch this? But it's true. Like I'm inspired by both of you. I'm inspired by that group of women that I met that night, and I'm so glad that I met all of them. I mean, Jackie's a part of that. Sandra. I mean, Justine. I'm there's so many women that I met that night that truly I was like, oh, I'm playing in the big leagues now, guys. I gotta buck up a little. I'm the young buck, and that's how I felt. And I've been able to continue to be inspired by you on the daily, truly.
Thank you.
And so I couldn't be more of a fan of yours, Steph. So thank you for being here. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And we love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, follow Steph to see what she's doing next. And we will see you next week on Fem Tell All.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone.